Anyone who's been paying attention knows that there is a lot going on the southern border. I'm also being told there's a lot going on at the northern border, but we're going to stick in this interview to what's going on with the United States and how to fix this issue at the southern border. To do that, I have with me Vince Vargas. Vince, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So you served for many years as active military duty in the Middle East and then back here at home on the border protecting the United States of America. I appreciate you coming on to discuss this important topic. Why do you think it is, as I read the media, it seems that one party seems to believe that the number of illegal immigrants coming into the country is normal. It's actually fine, while the other political party seems to use words such as crisis, issue, national security, threat. Why do you think that there is such a difference, and what is the real situation? Is there a real threat at the southern border?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. So why do I think there's two completely different conversations on the political spectrum? I think both sides of the political spectrum view kind of like society differently, right? And I think both of them, I would say this, that there's two arguments happening at the same time all the time when it comes to immigration. You have homeland security and you have immigration policy. And so one tends to think about one more than the other at times. Homeland security is a very important mission that obviously we implemented during 9/11, and that's really the Republican side really sees there's a big threat happening in our borders, and I believe that is true. On the other side of it, the other side of the argument would be that the immigration is not an issue, but that's not true either. It is an issue. It's a massive issue, and but the problem is a lot of them talk about the humanitarian issue that's happening, which there is a humanitarian issue that happens daily. It's happened very often, especially from illegal migration coming from the South, from South America, and so I think there's a kind of a bleeding heart for that side of the conversation, and they forget about everything else that happens, right? This very dynamic and very complex situation that happens with immigration. People tend to talk about the one thing they understand or the one thing they're mostly invested into, but they don't think about how complex and how many levels there are to this immigration process.
Gotcha. Okay. So could just be differing perspectives. Like you say, one side is like, hey, listen, if they're coming here, they're in danger, or they want to contribute to a society, where others are saying, hey, listen, we're a country of immigrants, but we don't know who you are. We don't know why you're coming. And so maybe just a difference in perspective.
It's essentially like the fans of watching a football game, one only focusing on defense and the other one only focusing on offense, both have two different arguments on how they could play the game better. And that's exactly what's happening. And that's exactly what the book tries to explain a little bit better, hopefully to get people more on, the answer is more somewhere in the middle, in my opinion, where, yeah, there is a crisis happening with who knows who's coming into this country, which creates a very dangerous space for us in America. At the other side is what do they see as a secured border, and really how do you see that as American as America as a whole? Do we want to see our country look like North America, where no one can get in and no one can get out? Right? I would say no. Most likely, we want somewhere in the middle of that. And at the same time, we don't want to have it so open that it's an open border, because then we have no country. And so, in both of those arguments, they have to understand that, yes, this is a land of immigration, but it's also a land where we want to protect those who are in this country currently at this time. And that's why homeland security is an issue. And so finding the dialogue to meet both of those in the middle, where we're both happy, is really where we need to try and get to.
Yeah. I've seen hundreds of comments below my videos when I address this issue saying, why does it seem that Congress is more focused on Ukraine's border or Israel's border, but never on the United States border? Would you say, from a military and a border patrol background, that we are being invaded? Or do you think it's just a big problem?
Well, I think using terms like invaded is kind of a very extreme, definition. I wouldn't use that term personally. I think it's more of, yeah, there's a massive influx that is hard to manage, and in that massive influx, there is potentially outliers who don't want to see good upon our country. And so the tactical mind of mine is always prepared for the worst case scenario. It's unfortunate that I have to think like that, but I have seen the worst of the world, right? I don't want my family to be concerned about it, but it's something in the back of my head I'm always concerned about. If you say there's a number of a certain amount of gotaways were reported recently, right? I think it's in the millions. And in those millions, let's just say 1 million to make numbers easy. If only 2% of those were outliers who didn't want to see good upon our country, well, that 2% of a million is a massive number. And it only took 19 to create 9/11, the World Trade Centers, 19 individuals, and it was a massive blow to our country. And so in that thought process, yes, we should be concerned with who are the outliers that come across this country that are undocumented, that we don't identify, we don't ever see. That should be a concern. But that doesn't necessarily remove the fact that there is individuals coming here who are seeking asylum from countries who are destroyed, and who are looking for opportunity. And if we want to be a country that still remains with a dignity, we have to still address those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, I've lived overseas. I've lived in, what they would call a third world country. I know that you have lived overseas. There is something special about America. There is opportunity here. There is safety here. There is community here, and I can see 100% why people would want to come to this nation. Do you believe that the cartel has become more powerful and more dangerous as an entity towards the United States now that they're bringing in tens of billions of dollars, or do they have roughly the same amount of power that they did, 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, I'm not a cartel expert by any means. I do know that they have a very successful business in what they do when it comes to human trafficking and drug trafficking. That is why we have a lot of challenges in trying to combat this. And so, as long as their businesses are successful, they're going to continue to push those businesses, and we have to find a way to mitigate those. And right now, it's working more in their favor than ours. I think corruption goes very, very deep into their system as well as I think it trickles into ours. Those are assumptions based on experience, but I don't have the actual numbers. I do think it's something that we need to address. I do think the reason why we have massive influx of immigration right now is because of manipulation from drug trafficking organizations or trafficking organizations, and that we have to find a way to combat that. And I say combat that not in the sense of lethal force, but there's many other ways we can try and mitigate this issue other than bringing lethal force to the situation. I think that's always going to be the last case and worst case scenario.
Okay. Do you think that there is what's the way to say this, like underground messaging being broadcast to the world either through US media or another country's media or Facebook ads or the cartel spending money, but putting out this underground message that the United States is open and we will get you into the country. And so that's what's pulling so many people from different parts of the world, or have people always just known get to America? It does seem that there's some kind of messaging out there that's making people believe that they should head our way.
Yeah, it's definitely a messaging. I don't think it's an underground messaging. I think it's just basic messaging. They have very good dissemination of information. They know exactly what parts of the border are weaker or that have a policy in place that are more, I guess, porous. And so they use that. I've seen the traffic go from Del Rio. I've seen it move all the way to Phoenix, to the Arizona area. I've seen it move down to McAllen. Throughout the years, it continues to shift in where the policies are more strict and more lenient, and they identify those weak areas and they pursue those. That's why recently in Del Rio sector, you've seen a massive influx of like 10,000 in one day, I think it was. But that is because they know going into those areas that currently what happens is they get processed, and once they get processed through a seeking asylum, those packages get pushed forward to ICE, and then from ICE they get them into to determine what their housing is going to be. They receive a notice to appear, that is a document that says here's where you're going to show up to your immigration judge hearing, and at that point they're released into the United States. That could be within 4 days of entering illegally, they get released into the United States. That's just the facts of it. However we feel about that is your own opinions. But that situation alone almost dictates that we're incentivizing coming over illegally, because now you get put into the country that you were attempting to do. So what's going to stop someone from entering legally? What, you're going to tell me? You're going to tell me to wait 8 years potentially?
Yeah.
Well, I can do it in 4 days in Del Rio.
Wow.
So that's a that's a loophole. That's maybe an accidental. That's maybe neglect. I don't know what you want to call that, but that is definitely a system that they're abusing, and it's starting to cause a ripple effect of issues.
Gotcha. Oh, interesting. Okay. Um, so one of the other frustrating things that I see in my community notes and comments is people saying, "Hey, I'm a senior citizen. I worked my whole life. I paid into the system. Now there's illegal immigrants getting more benefits and more monthly assistance than me, who lives in this country and paid in. How dangerous is it to have 6, 7, 8 million people come into our system and suddenly draining safety net programs, getting access to housing, food stamps, things like that? I know that from an American population, it feels incredibly unfair to have paid into a system and then have people reap the benefits of that haven't paid into a system.
I 100% agree on that sentiment. I'm not an expert in that area. I really don't know. I can tell you just personal experience and the fact that, yeah, that doesn't sound comfortable. That doesn't sound fair. That doesn't sound right. From the Border Patrol perspective, their hands are tied on this as well, right? Because I just know the career field of the Border Patrol. I understand immigration at a level where what the job entails. When it gets deeper into the economics of it and what potentially resources being overran and abused, I think we all see that happening daily currently. And yeah, that's concern for all of us. And I think those are the things that we're going to see happen more often if this doesn't get stopped or slowed down.
Gotcha. Okay. You have a new book out, Borderline, and in there you talk about how, unfortunately, Border Patrol is underfunded and understaffed. Is the U.S. government aware of this, and they just don't have the resources, or are they turning a blind eye? Because I've tuned in to watch DHS Alejandro Mayorkas testify over and over again that there isn't really a border crisis, and so it feels like we're being gaslit. And so I just talk a little bit about how they are underfunded and understaffed.
Yeah, it's a challenging. I think we can talk about it from this perspective. When you spend 5-6 years of demonizing this career field, of politicizing their jobs by getting ridiculed day in and day out about what they do, and people that don't really understand it just jump on board with that narrative, you start to really destroy the morale of an agency that has people retiring early, has people not even choosing to apply or leaving the career field because they don't feel the support from higher ups. And I don't say higher ups in the sense of their chain of command. I'm talking even higher in the political sense. And so that's what happens. Is the border secure? Well, you've seen exactly the truth on the news in the sense of the videos of massive numbers of influx. That what is your definition of secure and what is my definition of secure? Because I know what my definition of secure is: trying to allow the least amount of individuals to come over illegally so that we can have a better, safer system to identify who is coming across illegally and how do I identify them. Right now, when someone says that in the higher up position, I get concerned that maybe they really don't have a good grasp on what's happening day in and day out. They might have a policy they think is working, but I think the truth of it all is, from a Border Patrol standpoint, they are exhausted, they are overwhelmed, they're underfunded, undermanned, and so it's hard to manage this job in a way. And we don't have the capabilities in the sense where who is supposed to be housing them, and who's supposed to be transporting them, who's supposed to be holding this many influx of individuals. The city of Del Rio itself doesn't have the resources to handle all this, so they have to bus them out to other cities because it's a state of emergency at some point, right? And so the Border Patrol standpoint in this position is that they're overwhelmed, and it's like being handcuffed to do your own job, in the sense of so many people are coming here. They're doing the job by apprehending, yes, but then what after? All you can do is process them and hand them off to ICE, and then ICE is overwhelmed, right? And then what happens there? Well, then ICE hands them over to the immigration judge. Well, then the immigration judge is overwhelmed. So there's a funnel point here that we are so overwhelmed, our resources are tapped, and what's the answer? Well, the answer doesn't come from me. I don't create the speed limit if I'm a sheriff, and I don't create the policy if I'm a border patrol agent. Higher ups, they have to determine something that's going to work better than what we have now. And right now, the system is almost incentivizing illegal immigration, and which means why use the legal system, right? The legal system currently allows 1.5 million in a year. Last year is what the number was, somewhere around 1.5 million. That's great. 1.5 migrants coming from another country who's entered into this country legally. What an outstanding number that is. But counter to that, there was a number somewhere around 5 million to 8 million who gotaways or documented into this country illegally through the system that we currently have. So from gotaways and illegal immigration that we've allowed into our country based on the NTA system, right, that's happening currently right now, that's a lot of individuals coming into this country. At what point are we full? At what point are our resources tapped? At what point are all these non-government organizations going to see like, hey, we are not even helping our own people currently in this country, that we're now having to supply this humanitarian mission? And that's where my question goes. That's where it gets real struggle for me, because the border patrols are doing everything they can to do their job, but they're getting scrutinized by the public who doesn't understand there's multiple levels to the immigration system, and the border patrol is the most important part of this defending our country and our safety.
Yeah, it's like the skin, gets overlooked as the biggest, most important organ, and yet it keeps all this crap out of our body. Would you say, from having served in the military and border patrol, that there is this tendency for the American people to maybe put military on a pedestal and border patrol maybe to put them down?
I just don't think they really understand the career field, or they would hold them at a very similar regard, right? What the military does, I think, is, it's commendable, it's respectable, and it is a very small percent actually do that job, right? The border patrol is doing a very similar job in our own country on our own soil. We are stopping more drugs than any other agency. We actually hand off a lot to the DEA to manage, right, when it comes to prosecution side of things. And we save more lives than any other organization in the nation. That's not the conversation people talk about. They talk about these false whippings. They talk about these children in cages. They call border patrol border control. They call ICE border patrol. They call customs border patrol. Everyone gets titled the name border patrol, and they use it in a negative fashion. It's unfair. It's the reason why I wrote the book. My goal in this is, if I could at least answer those questions of what the border patrol does, that at least is one tier knocked out, where you have all the information you possibly can, and you can make a determination of how you feel about it. Then there has the ICE side of things. Then you have the customs side of things. And then you have to jump up the chain of command to the political side of things. Who's making these political policies? What policies do you feel are fair? What are necessary? And how do we determine those? We got so overwhelmed that our Department of Homeland Security agency wasn't even managing it. We had to get FEMA involved because there was no position to house any of the humanitarian cases, right? If you're here for seeking asylum, okay, that's a humanitarian case. We'll manage it. We have nothing in place for that. ICE had prison facilities, right? Detention facilities for people who came over illegally. Then this massive influx recently, we had nothing in place for this. So there was nothing in place. So what happened? Instead of explaining that to the population, they said, oh, they're bad guys. They're keeping them in cages. They're separating the kids. All the false narratives for whatever political reasons that was. It was absolutely unfair for the Border Patrol.
Wow. Okay. Help just to help the listener understand. So there's a chain of command from Border Patrol on up. Is the disconnect happening within the agency, or is it once it jumps to the federal level, or once it jumps to the political level? Where do you think the breakdown is happening in understanding and communication?
Well, I think, this career field wasn't ever really highlighted to the American people very much. And so there's confusion there, right? So just first of all, when someone enters the country from a port of entry, those are customs agents. Customs wear the blue uniform, right? All they do is determine your citizenship. They say, hey, are you American citizen or not? They check your documents. Outside of the port of entry is what the Border Patrol is supposed to protect. Everywhere outside of that port of entry, all borders across the southern and northern border is covered by Border Patrol agents. And that is 20,000, less than that now, somewhere around the 19,000 individuals who protect our borders daily. And that means 3 different shifts, right? Plus those who are in supervisor positions, admin positions, plus those who are on vacation. So in one sector, 200 miles, you might have 25 to 20 individuals trying to guard that border. And so that's the Border Patrol. And what they do is they apprehend, safeguard human life, and interdict any kind of drugs, personnel, bodies that come across illegally outside of a port of entry. That's what the Border Patrol does. From that position, they take them to process them, determining on what their case is. So if they say I'm seeking asylum, it's not the Border Patrol agent's job to determine that. All I do is process the paperwork and what they say, and I hand off to ICE. ICE is the next layer. ICE will determine where they house them or they deport them. And that's based on whatever policy is above that. Now, ICE can't make a determination of their case either, so they'll take it to the immigration judge. The immigration judge then will make a determination, say, okay, you go here, you go here, you go here. Whatever that is, after that, all is based on whatever policies are put in place by the government. And so that alone, people miss. They don't even realize it. They think it's Border Patrol's to blame for everybody, or Border Patrol released them, Border Patrol's holding them. That's false. Border Patrol process their paperwork. We try and get them to the ICE as fast as possible. Sometimes that's 72 hours, 42 hours, depending on how many people, influx of individuals. During the time they're with Border Patrol agents, they're fed, they're given medical attention. That it's the same thing as if you're in our custody, we're going to protect you. And we also have to have a basic investigation of human trafficking potentials. And so that's what we do. And we determine everything we possibly can before we hand them off to ICE. And so the confusion is, what is everyone's job? Well, the book explains that, because I think that's important. I think it's important for people to really understand the system. If they want to be emotional about the system, well, let's really understand the system so we can have an educated dialogue. And then from there, what are the policies put in place? Like I said earlier, the sheriffs don't determine the speed limit in the state does. We don't determine the policy, what the Border Patrol does. The policies are in place by the government. All right. So our federal government has to determine that. We have to put people in office that we believe will justify what you want to see as a secure border. And we have to make a determination, what does a secure border even look like?
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem to even be defined. Do you think these so-called tricks by Ron DeSantis and Governor Abbott of trying to bring attention to the dire situation at the border and the struggle of Border Patrol by sending, and I hate that these immigrants are being used as a pawn. They totally are, right? These are humans at the end of the day that felt like they were going to come to the land of opportunity, right? But do you think that move, that maneuver of sending these illegal immigrants out to Chicago or New York or California or Martha's Vineyard, wherever it is, do you think that was a positive thing that has brought attention to the Border Patrol issue? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I just think it's a little, those are games, and I get why the game was played. I get why it was done. But personally, I think, when you're sitting here arguing, no one's learning, no one's having educational dialogue, no one's actually moving the needle in a good way. I think things like books that are written by people who've actually done the job is the most important thing. I think, I think our politicians do need to spend time on the border, actually come walk the border with us. Let me show you day in and day out what it looks like and why it's so difficult. You have our political top echelon, they show up, they wave hands, they shake hands, they do their thing and they leave. But you don't see too often those, put on the outfit and go out there and go do the job and see what it takes every day. I think there's a disconnect from what we do and what the reality is on the border. And I don't think, any of the political officials really understand it to the point where they want to make, some executive changes. It's challenged. It's a very tough thing to feel that you have no voice. And that's kind of the position I took, is to try and be the voice with an educated dialogue, an educated book to inform the people that deserve the information that needs to be told, and not an exaggerated truth left or right, because you have both sides of the party creating, who's going to one up the other one with any kind of antics. And I don't think it's a healthy dialogue. I think it's just a waste, and it's emotionally driven and not educationally driven.
Okay. So your pressure cooker situation is just their photo op opportunity. And they're not really taking the time to understand the good, the bad, and the ugly of the situation.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, there's two parts that are happening daily. These border patrol agents are out here trying to protect our nation, but as well as they have to pull a family out of the Rio Grande River from drowning. They have to save someone from dehydrating. There's a real human life that we're dealing with daily. And, and we have to determine whether they're here to try and cause harm to our country. And so the Border Patrol has the most complex job in any kind of law enforcement, because they have to wear many hats at the same time. I have to be an enforcer. I have to be a caretaker. I have to be a nurturer. I have to be a humanitarian mission. I have to do medical interventions. So many things are happening in this career field, and the world is watching and judging every minute of it. It's a challenge. It is a very hard, complex job. And I think having good dialogue and honest, real dialogue is the only way we can have people to appreciate this career field, appreciate the challenges of it, and get the support deserved.
Yeah. Now, I believe I read online, and I believe it was you, but didn't you have an opportunity where you actually had to go into the river to save someone that was drowning?
Yeah, I mean, part of my career was in the Boar Star team, and so we rescue anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. I don't care. I don't care what the situation is. If your life is at risk, and our motto is so others may live. And so there is times where you jump in to save people, and there's times where I was unfortunate and I was too late. And I don't question any of that. I don't question who they are. But if it's a human life that is potential losing their life, I'll risk my life for them.
Gotcha. Oh, wow. That's really neat. If you were called on by a future president to consult and give feedback, maybe lay out a plan, what would be some of the steps that you would recommend for the president and Congress to better understand and take action on?
I love that you said the steps, because I think it should be something to that effect. A lot of people ask that question and look for this one answer that's just going to
Yeah,
blow
this
everyone.
overnight miracle.
Right. This isn't a 1+1=2 answer. This is more of the recipe for a cake, and anything too much or too little can destroy the whole flavor of the cake. There's multiple levels to this. I think there should be education going down south. We need to educate our southern countries to teach them what the real legal way of becoming a citizen is. We have to be huge advocates for education and explaining, here's the truth, here's what you've been told, here's what's false. We don't have that. We have trafficking organizations who are manipulating and teaching them, here's the only way, here's the best way. We have to streamline our process of what we have currently. It shouldn't take 12 years for someone who's really coming here to do work and do a good thing and who's going to invest in this country. We should give them a little bit more streamlined process to that. There's the DACA situation. We have to identify where's the cutoff for that. What are we going to do? We're going to continue to allow DACA or not, or how do we fix that process? There's a lot of layers to this. We have to create a way to, why are you running for your country? How can we maybe help, a diplomatic approach to how can we help? What can we do? Can we create something in your country, whether it be manufacturing that would employ more, that would make your country more thrive and successful? We have to work with we're attached to them by the continent. We're connected. How can we help those countries at least thrive, so then we could all thrive together and we won't have such a massive influx of immigration? There's a lot of approaches to this. Like I said, it's a 7-layer cake of things we need to do. We need to enforce the border. If you cross illegally, you have to face a repercussion. There has to be some kind of way of creating deterrence. And that means you are prosecuted by law because you broke the law. You go to jail. And when we start to do that, when we start to enforce repercussions for entering illegally, you will see immigration slow down dramatically, because like you said, the messaging system that they have is so profound, right? As soon as they say, hey, you'll go to jail for a year, don't do it, boom, it all ceases. It happens all the time. Once you've implemented different procedures and you've seen people go to jail, they will change and they will look for another weak link. Okay. And we have to continue to uphold that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one overnight plan would be, hey, we're using rubber bullets on everyone that crosses the border for the next week, and then we're switching over to real ammunition, right? But again, these are humans, and it's like you've got to get to the root cause of why they're fleeing. There has to be some kind of repercussion. It's like, hey, no, we can't put you up in a $600 a night New York hotel with dinner and breakfast and lunch. That doesn't, teach them not to come. They call their family, hey, get out, get up here. It's great, but maybe there's what was it? The remain in Mexico, or they're sent back, something. At least there has to begin a dialogue of what is that repercussion for illegally coming into the United States. And it can't be we reward you with cell phone, $2,000 a month, a hotel, and a lawyer, right? Like that again, just, keeps the green light flashing that the border is open.
Yeah, it's hard. You hear people say that, like, can we shoot them all? Like, is that the country that you want to live in? Because I don't. I want a country that has dignity. I want a country that has rules. We go to war and we still abide by rules because we're a decent country with morals and values, and we have to still uphold that. We're a country that allows immigration, but we have to really fix the dial of that immigration currently right now. We're just in a bad spot right now that we need to fix. Hands down, that's the facts. We know it. But we can't lose our dignity by starting to say, let's just shoot everyone that comes across. We don't live in their shoes. We've been given the golden ticket by being born in America, and we can't question, we can't sit here and judge anyone who enters this country illegally. They're trying to do their best by whatever means necessary. 247 lost their lives in the Del Rio sector alone. They were attempting to come here for something better than what they have, and they were willing to risk their life for it. And so we have to understand that. We have to have some kind of empathetic views towards that, or else we lose the dignity of who we are.
Okay. So you've got this new book out, Borderline, Defending the Home Front. What are some things that people might learn that we haven't discussed? And then what's the best way for people to get a copy of that book?
Yeah, this book was written to hopefully humanize the badge, to identify how incredible this career field is and the respect that they deserve. I also showed a lot of the different possibilities in this job, hopefully as a recruiting asset. I want people to see this job and go for it. It's a great career field. They pay really well, and they have special operations team that do some of the biggest jobs in our nation. I'm talking medical, and also some of the escape convicts you've seen in recent years. Who was chasing them down? BORTAC. Those are Border Patrol Special Operations teams. And so I'm extremely proud of the organization. I wanted to show my voice and give them a voice because they needed it. You guys can buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere that you buy books. I just really appreciate your time and allowing me to have this platform to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I mean it's important. It came up in the recent GOP debates. It's on the news every day. I talk about it at least a couple of times a week. So I was glad to have someone who has boots on the ground experience on the good, the bad, and the ugly. Vince, I'm going to put a link down below so that people can go support you, buy that. Where can they follow you? Where's the best place?
I'm everywhere on social media. You can just find me at Vincent Rocco Vargas. Rocco is spelled ROCCO. I'm in every platform you can think of. I welcome all the questions. I welcome open dialogue. I'm here to explain the best I can. I have no qualms about jumping on a phone call and having a good discussion. You message me, I'll respond.
Great. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.